I love starting a podcast, posting a IG story. That's a true millennial move.
Millennial or Gen Z?
I'm millennial, bro.
But I mean, like, I feel like it's Gen Z. It's very much Gen Z. Actually,
No, I'd be
Gen
on
Z
TikTok if I was Gen Z.
So what is your what is your mission around fitness? What's your mission?
Move well through life is like something that we say. There's a quote from a gal called Ida Rolf. She found a thing called Rolfing Structural Integration. An interesting quote that she has that I like is, the way that you walk through a room is the way that you walk through your life. And people in the modern era, we do a lot of workouts, we do a lot of diets, we do all the things, but statistically speaking, we're still generally getting more obese each year, more anxious each year, more depressed each year. Hormones have been declining for, decade after decade. So it's like, what the hell is going on? And what I suggest, and I'm not the only one, obviously, in the Align Method book that I did, or any of the programs or anything that I'm thinking about, is what is the low-hanging fruit that we're missing in our day-to-day lives, that we can just start to create subtle deviations in how we live our daily lives to start to fill in some of these gaps. And so some of those gaps are like...
Yeah, what is the low-hanging fruit?
One, we're in chairs all the freaking time.
Yeah.
It's like, and then you go and you do some, powerlifting workout or Olympic lifting workout, or you go play pickleball if you're in Austin and you're cutting, and you're potentially risking, suddenly you hurt your back, or you pick up a pillow that was too heavy, and you're like, oh God, like I'm down. And it has nothing to do with the pickleball or the pillow or whatever. It's this slow, ongoing, repetitive aggregation of fairly compromised movement patterns throughout our daily lives. And so it's really like one simple solution would be cultures that spend time on the ground, be like where it's been studied, be like Northern Africa, Eastern Mediterranean, Southeast Asia, places of the sort. They have minimal to no instance of osteoarthritis in the hips, in the knees, minimal pelvic floor dysfunction. The adult diaper industry is exceeding that of the baby diaper industry in the United States. That's crazy.
That's pelvic floor as it right? Like pelvic
floor dysfunction.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
and then
it's got flaccidity around our pelvic muscles.
I think I heard you say as well in Chris's podcast that injuries from falling.
Yeah. Dude, fall risk
is not really a thing in other cultures, or less of a thing.
If you get up and down off of the ground with regularity, there's no fall risk. There's not like, are you worried about just falling?
No.
In your daily life?
No.
It's not because you're not 70 or not 60. It's because you get up and down off of the ground, and you can get away with a lot more as a younger person. But what happens is, as you know, if you stop doing a movement for some amount of time, you get an injury. You break your arm, you're wearing a brace, you're in that brace for X amount of time, your muscles atrophy super quickly. And those ranges of motion that a person naturally goes through to get up and down off of the ground atrophy, and the joints start to essentially almost like callus over, you could say, or like calcify over. And eventually you lack that range of motion. You create this gap between you and the ground. It gets bigger and bigger every day until eventually you can't do it anymore. And now you are a person that experiences this thing called fall risk.
So the practical thing would be doing movements where you can regularly have that's why I love the burpee,
Yeah.
And as silly as it is, it doesn't even have to just be a burpee. It could just be ground, lay down on ground, stand back up.
That's what like what Muslims do 5 times a day.
Yeah.
It's a health practice baked into culture. That 5 times they do the prayers.
Yeah.
And they prostrate and they go through, and they literally just go through this round over and over again of getting all the way down to the ground. And essentially doing like a what is it called? Like a child's pose in yoga.
Yes.
And then they get back up, and then they don't have hip and knee and issues and fall risk.
It's funny. You're saying you atrophy if you don't use something. And I was thinking, I don't know why my mind went to this, but in 40-Year-Old Virgin, when he's like, is it true if you don't use it, you lose it? Have you seen that?
Yeah.
And she's like, is that a serious question? But I that was the first thing I thought about. You know, if you don't use it, you lose it. And
You ever do semen retention?
no.
You want to talk about it?
Yeah. Yes. Retaining your seed. What about so you just went, okay, let's go. I guess.
I mean, I'm not a professional, but it's interesting. I mean, there's things that person can do. So that like some of the interesting, really not very scientific ideas is that in each load, you have about enough sperm to populate the United States. United States population is like 350 million. In a load's like, I think it's like 250 to 300 million.
Yeah. Not me. I'm built different.
You're built different.
Yeah. So I'm at like Chinese level.
Yeah.
I got 1 billion.
Are you a big load guy?
We are off to a great start. I'd say average.
Yeah.
I saw Tom Segura's like, he was like, dude, it's a problem how much comes out. That's like a continual thing he talks about.
Would you rather have more, less, or are you like, this is a sweet spot where I'm at?
Whatever's the most fertile.
Yeah.
Right? Whatever's the most.
Well,
I've heard that it doesn't matter how much comes out.
it's about motility.
Right.
Yeah. I went through a process. It didn't actually end up happening, but I went through a process of doing, I think it's called in vitro fertilization. So I went through the whole thing of like measuring all my sperms, the motility, sperm count, like all the stuff. Something interesting detail from that I learned was you're not allowed to nut 3 days. It's like 3 to 5 days is the ideal window. So if you're nutting before you do your sperm donation, then it's like, no, your sperm it's going to be too low. And so the ideal time frame to have like maximal concentration of swimmers is like 3 to 5 days. And that also coincides with some of like the bro science research around testosterone spiking after about a week and then starting to plateau if you go no fap. And then that gets into like no fap and no porn. I think that's something that I heard. I don't know. So I was listening to a podcast recently. I was like, oh yeah, that's interesting. I think that the no fap and no porn are conflated as one thing.
Right.
I think the issue is really when you're like chronically addicted to whacking it to porn.
Yeah.
Compared to like you're having like a exploring your own sexuality in your mind and like touch with yourself in the shower or whatever. I mean, I don't care what somebody does, but I think those are two completely different categories.
Different. Yeah. Well, I want to talk about dopamine a little bit, but I do want to hear your thoughts on the semen retention thing, because we went away from that. Like, what's the retaining semen?
There's interesting stuff. So I would recommend that people are interested in looking up a guy called Montauk Chia. He's like considered probably the most renowned nut retention guru on the planet.
What do we call it? Ejaculate.
You don't like nut?
I do like nut, but I feel like you're speaking with a scientific tone, you know, and it's like, this is kind of, you know, no, we'll call it nut. Okay. He's a nut retention guru. What about this nut retention guru? What does he bring? What knowledge does he bring?
Well, all right. So there's some research that I'm a little murky on, but I'll try and tap back in. One of the things, there was actually some studies that I read in one of Montauk's books a while ago, and they did some research with, there's a particular type, I think it's a tapeworm, that genetically is actually pretty similar to humans, which is kind of random nod. So the scientists will do studies with this particular tapeworm, and we have to like fact check this and like look into this.
Okay.
But what they found, I'll try to make it as short as possible. They did a study with the tapeworms where they had one tapeworm be able to like nut or ejaculate with great regularity. Another one had to be completely abstinent. And then the other one, they like neutered it, but it was allowed to have sex. Mm-hmm. And what they found was the one that was nutting all the time or ejaculating all the time, their lifespan was like cut down by like a third. And then the one that was completely abstinent was like another third. And the one that was able to have sex but wasn't ejaculating had by far the greatest longevity. And that's the general suggestion within the semen retention space.
Is to have sex and not ejaculate.
Yeah, so you can do like it's called a retrograde ejaculation, where you contract the muscles around the pubococcygeal muscles, particularly, like call them the PC muscles, essentially like your P muscles, and you go through like certain like visualizations of sorts, and you visualize that buildup of quote unquote sexual energy and around the dong, and you work on doing like breathing practices to start to literally pull that quote unquote energy up the spine and create this loop goes up the back of the spine, down the front, the nose, down the jaw. One of the interesting things with that is you want to connect your tongue to the roof of your mouth. This completes what's called the microcosmic orbit.
Oh my God, Aaron. Oh my God, man.
And why that's interesting.
I'm tearing up right now.
So in this world,
there's just so much woo-woo.
In this world, no, we can get off this at any time. This is you.
No, I love it. No, I want to hear more.
I'm not saying that I align with this.
This is the fun. Well, this is the funny thing is like, I know that shit is woo-woo and bullshit sometimes, or maybe not. It just sounds insane, and it has some sort of effect on me.
Yeah.
Like I still change my practices because of it. I'm not going to do semen retention and
you can
non-ejaculate sex, but like our mutual friend Austin, he's continually saying like, no, don't eat that, bro. BPA's and that, and
too far too.
You know, he goes way too far, but it's fun.
Well, he might go just the right amount of distance for himself.
Yeah.
For everybody, it's different. You know, how much like rules and regulations do you want to have in your life? And placebo and nocebo, are incredibly powerful. So if you tell something has an effect, it's like you're right.
Yeah.
Typically.
So completing the cosmic orbit.
Call it microcosmic orbit.
Microcosmic orbit.
So why I was going to say that
dong.
Yeah, why that's interesting is that then relates over to, and we can talk about like exercise and all that stuff if you want. But why that's interesting is that's something that would also be recommended in like weightlifting practices, or like proper nose or proper breathing. So you're breathing through your nose, your tongue's going to rest on the roof of your mouth. An interesting thing that we're probably not going to do it, but if you stand, like a little like parlor trick test you can do, if you stand in front of someone and you put your arm out and you have that person push down in your arm, trying to like pull you off balance, and you do that with your tongue at the bottom of your mouth, you'll feel it's like easier to pull them off balance. Then you say, okay, now I want you to drive your tongue up to the roof of your mouth, up to the maxilla, just the bone, the roof of the mouth. Drive your tongue up there, and what you'll find is like way harder to knock the person off balance. And the suggestion with that is that there's different things. There's like the concept of irradiation, which has been kind of debunked, but that was what the Pavel Satsulin called it in his book, like Strength of the People, I think.
Yep.
There's another term called CAP, which is co-activation potentiation. The suggestion is by specifically driving those muscles around the tongue and the jaw, it's essentially creating like more, I think the term would be like neural drive, like more neural output.
Yeah.
So your nervous system is like more engaged.
Yeah, right? And that we tested that, you and I. We did.
Oh yeah, we did that.
Yeah, we did the band in the teeth.
Right, exactly.
Yeah, that is very effective, incredibly effective. Yeah, it's crazy. I find it more to be around the neck, but I understand how bite works. Like, I think I didn't really notice the bite making it happen. Like if I had someone pulling on my head while I was doing push-ups, that might be effective as well. But the fact that there was the bite pulling, I could feel my neck flexing so hard, so I could just rip out push-ups like it was nobody's business. But so this is back to semen retention, so we can close this. We should close this loop.
Yeah, I think so.
So that's the only way that you can see the benefits of semen retention is if you have sex and then don't orgasm, or is it like no FAP, or is it like?
I think the move is ideally, so in like the Montauk Chia semen retention world, the suggestion is for each age, like each decade essentially, it would be you'd slowly draw back the amount of ejaculations per week. And so if you're like young, if you're like 18 years old, it's like, cool, probably nut every 5 days. I don't remember what we pull up a chart, like look what it is. But compared to if you're like 60 years old, then it's like, okay, maybe not like every 2 weeks. And it's so there's a whole chart for ejaculation.
Very
per
interesting.
Week. Yeah.
Montauk Chia.
Yeah, Montauk.
So I wanted to.
By the way, I already prefaced, but I'm not saying any of that in any form of like,
oh yeah,
this is my stuff, authoritative. I'm just bullshitting right now.
Yeah, no,
this is full bullshit.
Why? This is why you're here.
Good.
We have a relationship prior to this that is a very comfortable relationship, meaning like
we do semen retention together. I hold his pelvic floor for him.
Yeah, and while we practice, this is what we do at On It Gym. This is Austin spirituality training.
Dude, that's Austin.
101.
That is Austin.
Okay, so I wanted to talk about dopamine because you said basically the difference between no FAP and no porn. I'm sure like no FAP can be effective as it relates to porn, but then you said like the exploratory, like self-exploratory sexuality is like much different than sitting down and whacking it to porn.
Yeah,
which is pretty obvious, I think. I had a little bit of a revelation with like dopamine in that I realized almost every time, it always happens when I try to make a difference in my diet, try to change something in my diet. And that we can talk more about why I'm changing my diet. But I had this revelation where almost everything I was doing around food was dopamine driven, not actually sustenance driven.
Sure.
And those practices involved like, it is now time, like here's the time of day where I should be eating. It is now time to order the food, get the food, sit down and watch TV while I eat the food. It doesn't matter how much there is. I just want it to taste good and feel good. It was not providing me anything other than that. And then I would finish and I'd be like, okay, where's the nicotine? Cause that's like the closing of that loop.
You got any?
No, I don't.
God damn.
I'm mitigating any nicotine use as well.
I'm fiending right now, bro.
But so like, it's a very, I've heard there's like different needs for people to fulfill with food and different responses. Like there's I think it's like you see the food and there's the response of like, okay, I need to get my fill. So you grab too much. And then it's kind of like
your relationship to food.
Yeah. It's also like the competition type thing.
You
like,
had that growing up, right? Was there like not enough food or there was competition between the siblings?
Not so much. It was more with friends.
Yeah.
Like when Chris and I have to sit down and share food, it's competition. And then there's the clean plate thing where it's like, I need to get my money's worth.
Yeah.
Which most people are going to do no matter what, even if it might not be ideal.
Oh, me too.
Yeah. Like it's
Great,
like
Great Depression stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, oh, you have a 3,000 calorie burrito. Like you have to finish it.
Yeah.
And you have to finish everything on, when obviously the restaurant just gave you too much.
Yeah.
There's a bunch of things like this.
You feel ill, but you need to get that value.
Right. And there's a bunch of things like this that have nothing to do with like living and fitness. And they've absolutely, it's funny now that I'm trying to make these changes and I look at my old practices and I just say like, well, what if I just kind of like fasted a little bit longer or just ate things in preparation for my training rather, things like that. Like,
yeah.
And it's just,
you eat to live instead of living to eat.
Right. And it was so jarring to me because when I realized this, like literally everything, every time I ate, it was dopamine driven. Yeah.
What do you think what do you think you're attempting to satiate with that?
It's the same, like, it's boredom. I actually found this out with Chris as well. It was like
boredom is interesting. That's like the
anxiety. It's boredom and anxiety go hand in hand.
I I should get a t-shirt that says "Ask me about my darkness retreat." You know, when like spiritual people do something, they do like they go to Burning Man or they do like ayahuasca.
Ask me about Burning Man.
They're like,
Ask me about my ayahuasca.
Like, that reminds me of Burning Man.
Yeah. No. So if you can connect this with the darkness retreat, that would be amazing.
The interesting thing with that. So I did this thing. It's called Darkness Retreat. My duration went in Wednesday evening, came out Monday morning. You're in like a dark room with yourself. They bring food once a day. The guy like drops like spiritual koans, you know, and asks how you're doing and talk to him for like 5 to 10 minutes or so. And then you go and you're just with yourself in this dark room, for however long. There's interesting traditions with it. There's like the not that you're asking, but there's various different, cultures around the world that actually do their own versions of darkness retreats. There's the Kogi tribe in the Amazon that apparently they have their children, some specific children, I think they're like chosen as like shamans or something. They'll go through their own version of a darkness retreat for the first 9 years of their life, where I believe the way it works, they just come out at night and then during the day they go into darkness and they like meditate and like, you know, whatever. So that's pretty interesting. It's been a Buddhist tradition for a long time. They do it longer as well. I think it's like 49 days. I wrote about it in the visual chapter in my book. It's like a thing. And the idea is that by going into darkness long enough, you essentially like expose yourself to all the deep parts of like things of shame and insecurity and all those like little anxieties that come up that in our world, typically we can just reach out, eat food, whack off, go exercise, you know, and just kind of keep on going around it. If you have nothing to do other than just to observe these little waves coming up, they like come up and move through and you actually get to kind of like get it out. But that was the biggest thing of that was like the idea of like boredom. Like, what is boredom? Like in any moment, you have infinite potentials of things that you could do, infinite potentials of places you could go in your mind, infinite potentials of like self-work or like, and like there's so much. And for a person to be in the place of boredom and then be like uncomfortable with that sensation, it's like pretty strange.
It's absolutely across the board between like every single person that owns one of these things.
Yeah, right.
Is quote unquote bored, but I understand what you mean, like that there's limitless possibilities. So boredom is not quite the
bored as a concept is just like, what is boredom?
So
how do you define boredom? What is boredom?
I would say, you know, this is not a definition of it, but I would say that it stems from having a ton of stimulation all the time at your fingertips, and it's external. It's not created by you. And you're not practiced in creating your own stimulation. So then the moment it's pulled away from you, now you have to create your own stimulation, and that's a lot of work, and you haven't been practicing it. And so now you have this sense of anxiety because now you have to work. And then it's like the same anxiety of like going to a class for the first time, like a fitness class for the first time and getting your ass kicked. You haven't been training and now you have anxiety about going to this class. And so like you take everything away from that and go on a darkness retreat. Well, it's like, well, now you have no fucking choice.
Yeah.
So you get pretty damn good at entertaining yourself, and boredom does not become a thing.
It forces you to almost like retune a neurochemical baseline.
Yes.
So that's what happens when you're doing in relation to the dopamine stuff, which this is something that I don't know a ton about either, to be perfectly honest. But the things that I hear from like, you know, Andrew Huberman and people that are more interested and savvy with this stuff, is that when you do the porn thing or whatever the catalyst to produce a bunch of dopamine / the rest of the neurotransmitters that are associated with different sensations, there's certain titles that get popularized and we just assume like, dopamine, like that's the thing. Like we understand what's going on. It's like, it's not just dopamine. But then what happens is you go into a deficit. So what your baseline was before, suddenly it's not just the baseline, it's actually below that baseline. And so that's where it becomes problematic, where now you have this like fiending type of temperament because you're actually, your body's craving to be set back to neutral because it's at a deficit. And so doing something like a quote unquote fast from technology or social media or, you know, any of that, can be very supportive for, it's uncomfortable. It can be even like painful in a way, but then the body comes back to like an actual healthy, neutral set point, quote unquote healthy. And then the sensation of fiending is less. And you can, instead of living life essentially like a slave to these different dopamine triggers, you can start to live life in more of a way of just like, what do I actually want to do? As opposed to like, what do I have to do?
Wouldn't you say also just to make sure that we don't demonize dopamine, it exists for a reason. It's very important.
Yeah.
But there are definitely practices that give us dopamine that, because the amount of work that goes into it, it's got to be okay, right? So like fitness is a huge dopamine hit.
Mm-hmm.
Cold and hot therapy are huge dopamine hits, and yet we don't talk about them in negative ways.
Well, you're doing the work. That's the,
right.
That's the thing.
So
that's the
is that the rule then? Like, as long as we're working for it, like, what if you had to run a 5K so that you could whack off to porn?
This is kind of what you're doing with like going out on a date. You walk a few miles, right?
You walk a few miles. You go on a walking date. You sit.
Bro, that's what I do. I do
you pay.
I do paddleboard dates.
Yeah, walking date, paddleboard dates.
If it's like a new date, paddleboard date. Because that way, if we don't like each other, we don't even really need to talk.
Yeah,
I can just go swimming.
Mm-hmm. And then also,
that was awesome.
It's middle of the day, so like you have to go home and change and shower. And you'll be like, okay, we'll meet up if things are good, and if it's not, you just don't do that.
Yeah, we're out.
Yeah. But that's so it's work.
Did you do like dinner dates?
I've done that.
Oh, yeah. Bad move.
I did a horrible one when I had no money, man.
You arrive,
and I spent like
you're like, oh, this is a no, and you're like, okay, let's go.
Yeah,
no good.
And like,
can't have that.
Eating in front of a woman that you've just met and trying to impress, like, it's kind of difficult, but just because you get self-conscious about it.
Yeah.
But did not have the money for this, and I spent like $250 on dinner. It was a super nice place in Chicago.
Do that? Hold on, was it a new girl that you weren't attracted to?
No, I was attracted to her.
Okay, you were into it.
Yeah.
Okay, that's okay.
Yeah.
I thought you weren't into it. I'm like, bro.
No. It was the first date with a girl that I was attracted to.
Okay, this wasn't like a Hinge thing or something.
No.
I see.
But it obviously didn't work out. But I think that, yes, the dinner date thing is an interesting one because, you're kind of like locked into the end of the night.
It feels like a hostage situation.
Mm-hmm.
You're like sitting, that's one of the things. Have you ever been to a country or even just a place where it's normal to like do communal eating? If you go to Ethiopian restaurant, China,
they have the
Morocco, Japan.
Yep.
Like there's a lot of different places like that. And that's one of the things that is really pleasant is if you go out to eat, you're going to be sitting on the ground essentially. So you're not just like cooped up on this same obscenely, it's just like a collapsed, generally, it's just not a pleasant position. It's just sitting on a chair. There's no bad position. It's just that position in and of itself doesn't support, say, being a better deadlifter or a better squatter or being able to load your joints well. And then you multiply that times your whole life starting in kindergarten. And then you elect to pay $250 to sit in that same hunched over position and, and just like stare across a table. It's just, that's weird. But if you go to a culture where it's like you're sitting on the ground, you can like kind of wrinkle and move and kind of like yoga yourself.
You can like basically go into like down dog type of situation. Not down dog. What's the one where it's like
I like to do a nice headstand.
No, in Japan they sit on the floor, right?
Yeah, you just straddle position,
and you can kind of like open your legs,
asana.
Yeah,
all the things. You could throw a little like FRC.
Yeah,
do a little isometrics in there. Do a little PNF.
Well, I think this is all actually more about having to do with like your level of ADD that you just like have to be squinching around and moving around. Me too,
bro. You got to move your shit. Like a person having some nervous energy would make sense if you're sitting like you're built to walk whatever, say 10 miles a day to get that locomotion happening. What you're doing with that is you're circulating your lymphatic fluid. The only way lymphatic fluid moves is through muscular contraction. So if you're sitting, pulling up, like stewing in your own metabolites and all the buildup of the day, for you to not have like maybe a little nervous stir of like, I need to go exercise,
dude,
would actually mean your body's probably more than likely been started to become adapted to being sick.
You know, it's very strange. If the conversation is good and we're just flowing and just going and going, like I don't notice any of that shit. But if you're trying to meet someone and like figure things out and manipulate, like there's a very cognitive aspect. Like the conversation doesn't just flow all the time. If it does, that's great. Cause I know like, I'll go to dinner with Caroline and like, we'll be really into it. So into it that we're sitting crammed in a thing and I don't notice it at all. And then the waiter comes in and like breaks that whole thing up and it sucks. But if you're on a first date with someone and you're sitting in that, I definitely would notice being cooped up and crammed up. But I would say that like, definitely like it's more the being locked in with someone for like up and through the end of the night. That's brutal.
What's
right?
the most challenging thing that you've learned about yourself in your relationship with Caroline?
The most,
like this hurts, this sucks, but I'm growing from it.
Wow, that's a great question. I would say
I host a podcast.
Yeah.
No big deal.
The most challenging thing?
Yeah. Like the thing where it's like, oh my God, I hate this. We're going to, do we break up? Do we not? Like, this is hard to move through, but it's because I was the problem or I had some stuff that I hadn't addressed. And now I've learned, I've grown through it.
I think like as you said this, I tried to think of a very individual answer, but I think this is just a common answer, but it's like the biggest challenge for me was not letting past relationships dictate my actions. And that's by far the biggest challenge.
With her, with you, like
with her, yeah. So the way that I act towards her, the way that I approach her, I don't want to let previous relationships get in the way of that. You know, someone in previous relationships burns me here or there. I now create this like little guard.
Oh yeah.
And now I'm a different human being than I could have been with her. So that's been the biggest challenge. And that's totally a me thing.
Is there any parts in your life, childhood relationships that you have had trouble with forgiving? And I'll promise to back out of like overly deep psychoanalytic.
No. I actually do forgive really well.
That's good.
Yeah. And like I'm totally down to forgive people, especially if it's like face to face. Maybe it's a little bit of like a people pleaser energy that I have.
I don't understand how people don't forgive.
Yeah.
Like that to me is that's like an odd concept. There's probably parts of myself that I don't actually, it's like you don't know what you don't know. So there are probably parts of myself that I haven't forgiven. I think it's probably the easiest to not forgive one's self, or like myself. But I personally, the concept of like someone doing something wrong, I'm trying to think of situations where I'm like really, like there is actually one person in my life right now that I'm annoyed at because he owes me some videos and I've been messaging him and emailing him and he just doesn't freaking respond. I'm like, bro, like I need that. Like you filmed it, it's a thing. Like, what are you doing? So there is some anger that I noticed coming up with that. But the feeling of holding resentment towards someone, it's, you've heard all this before, but it's like, it's literally, they don't realize
What if they resent you?
That's tough too, but that's on them. That's their business.
Yeah. So like, that's the hardest thing for me right now.
You're holding on to their.
Yes. Like, so the person resents me.
Yeah.
And I'm like, fuck you.
Yeah. Let it go.
Yeah. I guess I just have to be like, well, there's nothing I can do about it unless you step up and tell me what's wrong or whatever.
Yeah.
But that's like the biggest issue I'm facing right now with someone else is that they don't like me or something like that. There's beef. I don't even know what it is.
Yeah, beef stuff.
And so now that there's beef, I'm like, fuck this person. And I'm angry and I'm getting resentment towards them.
Right. So the potential lesson in that would be there's some part of you that isn't able to handle like a fragment in a relationship. So it's like it's fragmented, it feels broken, and like you need to fix it probably. Is that kind of like a thing for you?
Yes.
Yeah,
Yes.
me too.
Yeah. Yeah.
So if it's broken, I'm like, okay, like I need to keep on. But then oftentimes in your act of actually engaging and trying to fix it, you actually just keep on making it worse.
Yeah.
And you're breaking it more. It's like, bro, just like release. Like that's actually the healing.
The acknowledgement of it is like what did Seneca say? It was like, it's like, it's like thinking about the sickness before actually being sick. And I find that like a lot of afflictions, a lot of issues in my life are due to that. A lot of issues in a lot of people's lives is thinking about the problem maybe before the problem exists, or maybe the problem doesn't exist to that level and you're now making another problem, a separate problem.
Yeah.
And like, I guess relinquishing control of that is a tough thing because you don't have a actual synopsis or diagnosis for the issue.
Yeah.
People love going to the doctor so that they can get a diagnosis.
Oh yeah.
They can know exactly, hey, I'm feeling weird. Is this a problem? Well, I don't know if it's a problem. Can I go to someone and I would rather, or not me, this is I figuratively, I would rather walk up to a doctor and have them tell me there's something definitively wrong with me than to have this gray area of not being sure. And I feel like there's a lot of that, and that can transfer into a lot of different things.
Yeah, that was we're story making creatures. And so if we have some expectation of what's happening, it kind of like calms our nervous systems in a way. Examples of that's pretty fascinating and ridiculous would be during the times that the Nazis were bombing different countries in Europe. They're doing the Blitzkrieg strategy, where you just come in and just go nuts. The places that had a regular schedule of bombing, where it was like, oh cool, 3:00 they're coming to fuck up our town, those people, their biomarkers and like cortisol and different stress markers were dramatically lower than the places that were like, it was sporadic. So if you're in that ongoing, just like you're on edge, you don't know what's coming next, terrible for the nervous system. But if some effed up stuff is happening, but you can start to actually prepare yourself for it, it's dramatically easier. So just having story of diagnosis feels better because you feel like you have walls, you have like definition to it, compared to just not knowing. It's like very challenging for the human.
I want to change the topic a little bit because this has been on my mind a lot, and I've talked to you about this quite a bit with Chris, and that is about body dysmorphia. And then also, there's a term that you brought up in your podcast with Chris called orthorexia, which I thought was really cool, and I want to talk about both of those things. But body dysmorphia is something that I really didn't realize that I'd had, and I think I've had it a decent portion of my life, in different moments of my life. I remember when I was in high school, I've always been like incredibly athletic. So it's just kind of like, I don't care what people think about how I look. I'm crushing it at sports. So it just doesn't matter to me.
Performance driven.
Yeah. Which is awesome. I can't suggest that enough. And that's the problem is like, oh, well, what if I'm not athletic, Zach? Like, what do I do then? It's like, well, find some sort of performance trait to get better at. Just dial yourself around that performance. And then you will feel better about how you look. At least that's the theory. And there's problems with that as well, but it's just something that continually happens. But anyways, I was in high school one day and it was 80s day. Did you ever have those days?
Maybe.
Like theme days?
Something like that.
It was 80s day, and it was also, we had our football game the following day. So I wore my football jersey and I had jean short shorts on. And I remember these girls laughing at me in the lunchroom, being like, look at how skinny his legs are. And I was like, that was the first time I'd have, and they were older girls too.
Oh boy.
That was dude, that shit shook me. Like it like gives me a weird feeling right now, And then that was just like one moment, but that was probably my earliest memory of that. And this is crazy coming from a guy who's 6'4", 240 pounds, but every moment in football was, you need to change the way you weigh. Like, you need to weigh more.
Yeah.
Or you need more muscle. Like, there was never an accepted moment of body type ever for me. I got to college, I kind of laid off that a little bit. There's a lot more cardio involved in lacrosse, so you didn't have to be as big and as powerful. But those habits of just continually eating were just like embedded within me. I got out of college, kind of started doing CrossFit, and I never ever took nutrition or anything seriously. I just thought, well, I'm a furnace, I can just eat whatever I want whenever I want. And I'm like slowly just like starting to out eat whatever training regimen I threw at myself. And I kind of still have those habits a little bit. With weightlifting, it got even worse. But now I'm trying to, I'm 32 now, it's been almost a decade since I've been in college, since I've had any sort of pressure to perform in like a certain way. And I have like the most body dysmorphia I think I've had in a long, long time. Yeah.
It's vulnerable of you to share.
Yeah. And it's very, very weird that it's happening now. But
how does it come up? Like, you look in the mirror and you're like, I'm a piece of shit, or what?
Well, I guess that, and a decent amount of comments, but without trying to sound too whiny, this is definitely self-driven. I basically am I'm trying to put on size for a movie, and I feel like I'm in this kind of catch-22. When I want to put on size and like try to get these muscle bellies bigger, it's like I end up putting on a lot of fat, and then when I want to lean out, I just look skinny, and I look wiry, and I get commented on either way.
Yeah.
The most common comment for me that I've gotten was like, Zach looks skinny, fat, and jacked at the same time.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
I
get that a lot.
That's a creative comment.
Yeah. So, and it's just like that one keeps circulating through. So like in the back of my mind, I'm like, I'm trying to beat that somehow.
Yeah.
And it's like at every turn, I can't do it. And I guess I'm realizing that I'm just like satisfying what other people's viewpoints of me are.
Yeah. You developed a operating system, you could say, at whatever age you did. All of us, maybe not all of us, me as well, but lots of us are in a very similar circumstance, where you have outsourced your level of self-worth to peripheral like external circumstances, people, opinions, random, could be a freaking bot in China sending some bullshit, trolling comment or whatever. And you've essentially outsourced your level of your internal sensation of self-worth to that, which as long as that is the operating system, you essentially are like a victim, which is, there's a lot of lessons in there. And I think the individual the reason that we get quote unquote triggered by certain stuff is it's sending the information or the stimuli saying, here's a thing. Here's the invitation to actually investigate this and lean into this. And so for you having that sensation, there's different options. There's, cool, this hurts. I'm going to distract, avoid,
right.
Do all those patterns, or to like lean into it more and say like, where do I, one you could do like from like a somatic type lens and say like, when you're experiencing that, where do you feel it in your body? That sensation of like, does it feel like shame? Does it feel like guilt? Does it feel like feeling powerless? Like when you're in that circumstance where you feel like I don't know, like what is it like? Like describe it more. The sensation.
Yeah, so I can.
But it's a sensation that feels like icky. You're like, ugh. Like what is it like? Like let's like get into it. What is it?
It was really childish the way that some of this came about. There was a video that I did with Derek, who you met when he came through here, and we were just training. And I knew it was going to be like this. Like I knew that Derek has not been focusing on training. He has 3 businesses and an incredibly successful YouTube channel. He is working around the clock. Trust me, I know this because I made that video with him and we worked crazy hard on it, and he was flying around to different places in the country while we were working on this to fix all these businesses. I knew that he wasn't training very hard. So when he came here, I go, hey man, you know, you have the day off today before you do Joe Rogan, the biggest podcast in the world. Let's do some training. And he's like, yeah, that sounds nice. Like, we'll just do like a easy back day. I'm like, cool. I'll hire my videographer. We'll make it really casual. You know, there's not many videos of you training on the internet. We do like a very basic, like we do like lat pull downs, rows, things of that nature that are just like, I don't know. And we get picked apart by like 3 different channels.
Mm. Oh, because you're not doing it right?
Because like we were being really casual about it. And it, like, then Derek had a response. He like wrote the person. He's like, dude, we were just being real, like chill. Mm-hmm. And then he made another video. And then Greg Doucette made a video. And it's just, it turned into this crazy thing. And now I'm still getting comments about like, dude, who is this like ugly guy? And like, he's way more than 20% body fat. And,
oh, yeah, that's
you know,
tough.
But it's coming from not my audience. But it's like,
yeah, it's tough.
Yeah.
Yeah, because it's confirming parts of yourself.
I wonder how many views it's at.
It's confirming parts of yourself that you're like, that you believe or you feel like could be true.
I need to, yeah.
And so then the opportunity is to go into
350,000 views.
Yeah, whatever. That's cool.
1,000 comments.
That's great.
Yeah. Yeah, it's great. It's great. I get some money from it, but that was a big one. And I remember actually I was with Caroline and I woke up in the morning and I saw just like boom, comment after comment after comment, and it was just shitting on us. Mm-hmm. And I was like, dude, I didn't expect this. But now having seen that, it's like I have practices that I want to do going forward. And the problem with those practices is they're kind of just feeding into the issues even more. Definitely keeping my shirt on a lot more.
Right.
Until I feel confident.
That's fine.
And that's, you know, I think people are like, no, you should be accepting of your body. And it's like, well, the amount of stress that would imply or that would give me at first. Maybe down the road, I'll probably do that. Probably wear my shirt more. I want to talk a lot less about the way other people look, just in general. And if I do, it'll be with a lot of disclaimers. Yeah.
That's another thing too. If you're, you know, if you are a person that's projecting that out into the world,
exactly.
And like, it's like we all, I think some of the kindest, sweetest, raddest people to be around are people that are in like AA or have, you know, a criminal record or whatever. Cause they're like, I'm in a glass house, bro. Like I don't, like I'm not trying to throw. Dude, like
let me tell you,
like I'm sure you got some skeleton. Like we all got. But when you're a person that's in like a righteous pedestalized position, that's one of I think the nastiest places to be.
The scariest one thing that I was thinking. So it's like shirt on more, just like until I feel more confident. Stop talking about the way people look, unless it's in a somewhat beneficial way or just with a bunch of disclaimers around it as to not be, you know, the guy throwing rocks in a glass house. And then the third one is like to be more thoughtful in the way that I move and do things on camera. The problem is though, that's not who I am all the time. Like I was being in this video, I was being who I am. Just chilling, man, like having fun.
Some demographic of people will align with that. I like that.
So those are the things that I want to do. But to get back on the
so you want to be loved by the people that love you for something that you're not. Is what you.
I know.
Saying. Right. So you're like, cool. I'll be this thing.
I guess I what I don't want is for people to I don't want people to misplace me that could potentially like me.
Why do you care so much about people liking you? And it's totally natural and normal.
Yeah,
and like I'm there with you, but like, why do you care so much?
Because I am a good person. I want to put that out into the world.
Why do you feel like you need to be confirmed by other people that you're a good person?
Well, that again,
Do you not actually?
Solid point. No, I think
I'm not trying to stump you.
But. No. It's wanting to be liked is a reflection of the things that I've done to like prove that I am a good person, or, you know,
Is there some part of you that doesn't believe that?
That I am a good person?
Yeah. What does good person mean? How do you define it?
I think, honest to God, I think that a good person is somebody who can respond with empathy towards other people. Like if they see it's this like inherent response of empathy towards situations that other people go through. That's what I feel. It's like the biggest part is about empathy. And like for a moment there, I was a little bit scared that I just didn't have that, or I didn't really have like the emotional toolkit to even respond to anything. And then with my ex, something just like really tragic happened, and I had this like visceral response.
Yeah.
I felt like, here's a great example of this. I felt like I couldn't be sad. Like anytime I was sad, I was playing the role of someone who was sad.
Yeah, I've been there.
You know what I mean?
I feel like
I'm not actually sad. Let me project that I'm actually sad because that's what I'm supposed to be.
Yeah.
But then something bad actually happened, and I almost felt like I wanted to fucking throw up and die. Like I felt sick. I was like weeping, hacking up, like wanting to vomit. And I think back on that day, and I'm like, thank God.
It's kind of a nice thing.
It really is.
The worst would be to not be that. Like that's
what I mean. That's what I would be fucking scared.
There's a quote from a guy called Sir William Osler. I think he's considered like one of the fathers of modern medicine. But the quote goes, the organs will weep the tears when the organs will weep the tears the eyes weren't willing to. Paraphrasing. But if the eyes are, if your capacity to purge emotion is repressed and blocked, then it has nowhere to go because it's not going out, but to go in. And so to be a person that's like, cool, like I'm open enough to feel and emote is actually, I personally, because I've historically had issues with that, and feeling like it's just hard to emote. Like I don't get it. I don't understand love. I don't understand relationships. I don't understand going to a family reunion and people just like seeming like they just love each other and they just feel connected.
Right.
And they feel home.
Yep.
They feel safe and they feel like a part. That was something that historically is something that has felt kind of like foreign to me. And tapping back into that through seeing a therapist and, doing shit like darkness retreats or like whatever your bag is, realizing that there are deep, almost like dislocated or frozen parts of, for me, my childhood, that it's like really hard for me to go back in and like connect with. And then I think what happens when you have parts in one's childhood that have been repressed, that you kind of like bypassed over, you just jumped it because it was too much to handle.
Yeah.
Then that gets held almost like that version of yourself, that boy at 11 years old or 15 years old or 5 years old or whatever, he almost like freezes and the maturation around that point almost like stops. And until the person goes back and starts to actually like get to know that boy or that girl and develop and integrate that into your adult man body, you're going to keep on fucking up relationships. Yeah. You're going to keep on tormenting yourself. You're going to keep on being this place of I'm not enough. You're going to keep.
That's really weird because I always see psychoanalysts or psychoanalysis and psychotherapy. They always talk about trauma as a place like past childhood trauma. And I go, well, I can't think of any, but that's the thing. But I would actually say lack of development is what I probably have.
Well, you're not going to be able to think
certain things when I was a child, and I just never developed them and just went back.
It's even like a language barrier. Like typically, if you are thinking about a thing, it's because you've created a story that may or may not be associated to an actual embodied feeling. So I can't feel about any of those things?
Right.
Like, can you feel the way that you felt, really viscerally? And there's different practices. A person can like literally go in and start to bring their awareness, which isn't weird. Like the idea of your awareness, you say words like that, people start, tripping out like, okay, here we go. Like give me the empirical data. Like one of the interesting thing with that is there was a, I don't remember the guy's name, but famous like yogi guy. And there was research, where researchers he was able to change, and this is like lots of folks can do this in these spaces, but he's able to change the temperature of his individual fingertips and like the back of his hand compared to the front of his hand, and is literally able, with his awareness, able to drive quote unquote energy, or in this, in this case, like heat, to very specific parts of his hand and say, I'm going to go here, the back of my hand, watch the temperature go up. Okay. How about my foot? Watch the temperature go up. The practice is called Tumo meditation, is one of the things where where Wim Hof comes from, not from Tumo, but like the concepts, and one of the practices, from my understanding, I've never like been involved in any of this, but one of the practices would be these meditator people would go out in the cold and put like a wet towel around them, and it's like freezing cold, and be able to create this internal warmth through driving their awareness into actually increasing the core body temperature of their body to the point that they can actually dry this cold ass towel as opposed to getting hypothermic.
So there's a couple things. I want to get back to the glass house. That was
hold on. But the reason I was saying this, because when we're saying things like feeling into what does my abdomen feel in relation to this story or this time of my life, or like the way that I just feel about this experience right now. What does my chest feel like? And that's the number. I believe the number is 100 million sensory neurons interlaced throughout the guts. So they call like the guts like your second brain. It's called I've heard it called like a cat brain, because it has the same amount of neurons as the brain of a cat. And so it's literally like it is like your enteric nervous system.
Right.
It is a brain in a way, like it is a thinking center. And your vagus nerve, which is vagus, it's the reason it's called vagus, comes from the Latin word vague something, but like vagrant. It's like a wandering nerve. It goes all throughout diaphragm and organs, heart, and all that stuff. If it's either 80 or 90% of the nerve pathways in the vagus nerve are actually afferent, meaning they're going from the guts to the brain. So they're listening to what's happening in the guts and sending those signals up into the brain, as opposed to the brain sitting up in its high tower saying, do this liver, do this gallbladder, do this heart. The heart's like, here's what's happening. Here's how you react, brain. Thank you, bitch.
So have you seen The Science of a Liver Shot? So like in boxing.
I don't know what happens there.
It's a vagus response.
Oh, I know it sucks.
And your brain says you must lay down now.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah. Have you had it?
No, I've never been hit in the liver.
It's not nice.
No, it's incredibly effective, and it's immediate response from the vagus nerve up to the brain saying, I need to get horizontal.
Wow.
And so people, most of the time people take a knee.
Yeah.
And then they lay down.
Yeah.
Sometimes they just fall and lay right down.
Would you ever do Krav Maga?
Probably not. That'd probably be honest to God, the last. No, not the last, but it would be definitely way down the line.
I think if you're like a Krav Maga guy, just get a gun. Like if you're going to learn jiu-jitsu, boxing, Muay Thai, you're like learning like a dance in this game that you can engage with people with, and it like makes you a better just like mover in life. But something like Krav Maga, like you're never going to get to practice that unless you're just a total terrible person.
Right.
So I think in that case, like if you're trying to use that, I think just fucking get a knife, get a gun. Krav Maga classes
in jiu-jitsu, we do a lot of stuff with self-defense, and I think it's very different than the jiu-jitsu we learn in class. It's a little bit more safety-based, like on yourself. So you're always trying to stop the punching arm, and you don't want to get yourself in a position where you can get bitten.
Combat jiu-jitsu? You're like slapping each other?
No, we've never done that. We've had like sometimes Cody will have on like his like heavy gloves, not the MMA ones.
This is 10th Planet?
No, this is at Fight Factory.
All right.
Yeah,
Right.
and he'll just it'll change the way you play, you know, because
Right.
you don't want to get hit. But you know, a lot of the self-defense jiu-jitsu stuff is about, you know, controlling someone on the ground with the ground, but you don't do competitive jiu-jitsu with that person.
Yeah.
You know, and our professor was like, when you are like in a position to start striking someone in the face when they're on the ground, he's like, never go down like this. And we're like, oh, because you don't want to hurt the guy. He's like, always go like this. He's like, always throw hammer fists.
Because you don't want to hurt your wrist?
Yeah, you don't want to hurt your wrist, and the teeth can go in your
Right.
yeah.
Yeah.
So, but I wanted to talk about the glass house thing. This weekend I was in Las Vegas, and it was a ton of fun. And we all took like a decent dose of psilocybin mushrooms, which if you're watching, like, be a responsible drug user if you use drugs. We were very smart, very responsible.
How much you do? 12 grams?
No. No, it was like a fun dose.
How much grams are we talking about?
Probably like 2 grams, but spread out.
I find sometimes 2 grams can be harder than more grams. Because you're in that liminal space.
Right.
You're kind of breaking through, but like not quite. So
Yeah.
It's kind of like,
Yeah, but there was enough stimulation and enough friends around to make it more of a party type thing.
Yeah.
Anyways, I was coming down from them, and I realized, I was like, man, I am definitely super harsh, super judgmental on my friends and my family when they do something that's flawed. And I see it.
mm-hmm.
And this is a big problem that I have. Like and I'm very quick to throw judgment at them when I see other friends just not interacting with, like, not having a problem with whatever that person's doing.
Mm-hmm.
And I just had this realization. It's like, dude, you're so in the glass house. Because, like, if this happens to you, you are going to panic.
It's just a part of yourself that you're not comfortable with. I think that's the only way for something to irk you. It's something within you that you're not comfortable with. I don't know if that's an absolute the only way.
Yeah.
But generally speaking, when there's something that's like, it's like, ugh,
Well,
ugh, it's usually
I know,
like, this is actually about you, bro.
Yeah, and I know yes, it is. It definitely is. But I know the consequence of either acting on that. So, like, sometimes I'll be like, hey, man, like, that's fucking lame what you're doing. Like, confronting or talking shit about that person to another one of my friends or whatever. I know that when I'm in that position, I'm going to stress out so much thinking about, oh, man, if I was on the other side of that doing what I'm doing now. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, that's just no way to go through life.
Can I take a piss?
Yeah, go ahead.
Is that cool?
Yeah. We are back, and Aaron has nicotine now.
My
So
nicotinergic synapses or whatever popping.
So
I just made that up.
Orthorexia. Can you explain that?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know what the exact, internet definition would be, but essentially it's being addicted to health to the point that it actually creates dis-ease.
What does it look like?
Someone that's maybe overly, excessively scrupulous with the way that they eat, to the point that they're blocking themselves from doing things that would actually create joy in their lives. So like the person that's got all of their food in a little Tupperware container, and they don't go out to eat in a certain place because maybe they don't want the energy of the restaurant person to like be poured onto their food, and I'm going to eat exactly 1,752 calories each day. And it's just like, ugh, like, bro, relax.
What about fitness? How does that play into this? Like, how somebody
like body dysmorphia would probably fall into that category, I'd imagine. Body
dysmorphia, and then also like overtraining.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, overtraining. Yeah, just being like obsessed with health to the point that you kill it. You do that with parenting. You could be such a good parent that you're like helicopter parent. You're like, bro, you're hurting your child. It's like violence.
Do you think there is like a chemical response? Like for instance, you'd say probably more cortisol.
Yeah, you generally would be, again, I don't know like what the data on this would be exactly, but yeah, generally a person in that scenario or disposition would likely be more activated with more regularity. So it's hard for them to like Netflix and chill. It's hard. Probably their vision, I would presume, would be more emphasized towards like the myopic lens, where you're like really like focused. Probably their breathing pattern would be more up in their like upper chest, breathing kind of more with their shoulders and such, in more of like a stressed state. And then all the correlating neurochemicals and hormones would coincide with that.
But then on the other side of that, you can't be a lazy bitch. You can't just be
everything's nuanced, man.
Yeah, it's just I've by the way, I've seen someone with what I didn't even know the term until I'd heard you say it. But I've seen someone with orthorexia, and it was like nauseating actually. They're a CrossFitter. There's a lot of it that develops out of CrossFit.
It's all compensation, man.
So CrossFit is one of those spaces where it is so effective in the way that it brings about intensity to training that, and that is the line at which I'm going to draw its effectiveness and efficacy, because I feel like there are many issues with it, just like there's many issues with other methodologies, but I feel like it is incredibly effective at taking someone and teaching them how to work hard.
Yeah.
And then
it creates team
camaraderie. And, I just remember like,
it's not the working hard, it's the working hard together. That's the reason that the model of CrossFit was so obscenely successful.
Well, I think when I look at the orthorexic person, I don't think they give a shit about team. I think they're more just like totally wrapped up in this feeling that they got. And like, for instance, there's this workout called DT. Have you heard of this? It's 12 deadlifts, 9 hang power cleans, and 6 shoulder to overhead, like 6 jerks or 6 push presses, and 5 rounds of that. And so if you do that really fast, like really, really fast, you can do that in, under 10 minutes, and some people under 5 minutes. That is however many reps, however many pieces of volume for the average person to do that in under 10 minutes when in all regularity at that weight, like without the pushing, without the situation, that person probably would have taken 3-4 times as long. That's, more intensity, working harder. And that's a great thing to be exposed to, the potential that you can work harder. What I saw was this person just continuing to just stack more of that on. If I did not reach this level of difficulty, this feeling of dying while I'm working out, it is not effective.
I think oftentimes a person that has that deep, insatiable yearning to feel pain likely probably has some issues around feeling in general.
Yeah, I mean, yes, that's the same thing.
So it's like hard to feel, and so probably at some point, that person, I like for me, I'm presently, full disclosure, like seeing a therapist and working on all sorts of childhood shit, and so my mind is very, in that realm. So I apologize if I'm going too much into all that.
No, that's this, because it would be a shame if you didn't go down that route, because that's essentially what all of this is.
Yeah. Well, that's why I became obsessed with bodybuilding as a kid. I went from being 100 and something stupid, 140 pounds or something, terribly crooked teeth, really awkward, misaligned bowl cut that my mom, bless her heart, would do for me. Parted down the middle, Dawson's Creek was like my thing, which now he lives out here. He actually became kind of not a friend, but like we know each other. I did a transition from there into becoming obsessed with bodybuilding and obsessed with counting my calories. And I was quote unquote feeding, which I think is a weird term to apply to eating. Every 2 hours, I'd have all of the protein smoothies and all the creatines and all the things. And I would just keep fucking training all the time. And I put on 70 pounds in a matter of like a year and a half, 2 years. It's just like, whoosh. So the combination of the steroids that I was experiencing through puberty, like the endogenous steroids, with just being obsessive, changed everything real quick. It was good, but I was incredibly imbalanced, and I didn't address any of the reasons. Like, what was the catalyst from the first place of like, why do I need to experience validation from other people in the form of, okay, you're big enough?
You know what's really weird is like I never had that moment where I was like I needed that validation, because I got that validation through literal just sports, athletics.
You still yearn for the validation.
Now I'm getting it. Is what I'm saying. It's like now I'm going through that phase.
Like a latent pattern.
Yes. It's like a delayed, like yours happened in puberty. A lot of people.
Delayed onset insecurity.
Yes. Yeah. And that's it. We made it
because you didn't have that. That's what a relationship is. So you have a relationship with your YouTube following and other people's YouTube followings. It's a relationship.
Yeah.
So you have right now what you're experiencing is there's a doorway into you actually healing your shit. There was a latent pattern that you never realized was there. Now you engage with this relationship. Typically it's with a girlfriend or a boyfriend. That's the thing that really peels the heart open, and you're like, oh my God, I didn't know this was a thing. And if people listening don't resonate with that, they don't really like get that, it's just because you haven't gotten into that yet.
Yeah.
Like, it will happen.
That's really wild. So it is
it's the most healing thing.
Yeah.
In order to heal your shit, you need to have your face fucking pressed up against it and just like, oh, it hurts.
Yeah.
It hurts.
Yeah.
That's the only way to heal.
Yeah.
And that's the literal translation of, I just had Gabor Mate on my podcast like a couple weeks ago.
No way. He was on Rogan.
Yeah, exactly. And so I've done, I think, like, I don't know, several with Gabor over the years. And he, in his book, The Myth of Normal, he breaks down a lot of this stuff, and he's really big on language. And one of the things that he shared with me is that the original meaning of vulnerable is like to be woundable, like to be able to be wounded. Trauma means wound, and the only way to actually heal is to be courageous enough to be vulnerable. You need to be willing to take arrows in order to actually be able to purge the shit from the past. If you're always shielded up, you're shielded from the outside, but you're also shielded from the inside. And you will just stew. And you will keep on being driven by these old subconscious patterns that probably happened sometime in your childhood, and you won't realize it, and you'll call it, what's that? There's a quote from somebody, but something along the lines of like, you're until you make the unconscious conscious, you'll be driven by the unconscious, and you'll call it fate.
Sounds like Freud.
I don't know.
He always talks about the unconscious.
We look it up. Yeah, the big unconscious guy.
Yeah.
I mean, anybody that's in like that realm is talking about the unconscious. So I don't know. But that's the thing. Like, you gotta hurt. You need to hurt if you want to heal. If you don't care about becoming a better person, becoming more at ease with yourself, and that ties back into physiological translations of being stuck in a chronically kind of like anxious state.
This woman. I also think that orthorexia, I mean, it's from my perspective, the issues that males deal with as far as body image is palpable because I'm a male and most of my audience is male.
Yeah.
But
palpable to you.
Yes.
Yeah.
But it's always been a disparity with body image and women. And I feel like the orthorexia thing, I've seen it manifested in women a lot. But honestly, now that I think about it, like, yeah, more so in women. And I swear to God, man, CrossFit is where I saw a lot of it.
Yeah. Cause it's so embarrassing, dude. I have a background doing manual therapy. Mm-hmm. So different manual therapy is like hands-on body work, using my elbows or knuckles or hands or whatever to get people's bodies better. And at one point I had an office in the, I think it's called LA CrossFit. It was like one of the first like 10 CrossFits in the world or something. And that was my original, it was in Los Angeles, obviously. That was my original introduction to really like being in CrossFit. Cause I was, working with some people from there, right. And I would like take some classes just to kind of have the experience. And I found it so shameful to look up at the board and see like the weights that I did or whatever. And I'd be like, fuck, like I have this story that if I'm not the strongest person or the fastest person or the most whatever thing, then that hits on parts of me where I'm like, I don't feel good.
Well, I think that is competitive.
There's healthy aspects.
Right.
But where it becomes unhealthy is like, cool, I'm going to compensate and I'm going to just butcher this movement in order to get more weight. And I'm actually going to have a mechanical breakdown in order to fulfill my ego.
Oh, that is
CrossFit.
I call that,
There's a big chunk of CrossFit.
Yes, I call that
that's the problem.
Yep. That's the, the Dunning-Kruger. That is the cognitive dissonance factor that I've actually covered that quite a bit on my YouTube channel.
Isn't Dunning-Kruger when the dumbest people think they know the most and the smartest people think they know the least?
Yeah. And then there's like the little curve where it like drops off in knowledge. But I was thinking about this. So say that you have this cognitive dissonance in golf. You're not going to injure yourself, right? Because like you go harder in golf, you golf harder.
No, you injure yourself in golf because it's so asymmetrical.
Well,
you probably won't injure yourself swinging the club, but you're slowly building imbalances to the point that eventually something goes awry. Okay,
so good point. I don't think that so there's trauma, there's like serious trauma that can occur in CrossFit.
Right.
And so when people are moving like shit.
Yeah, loaded intensity gets amplified. It will flush out issues, which is why training people at a high level or training at a high level is cool because it exposes you much quicker. Yeah.
So that's where I noticed a lot of it's the people who are typically 20 to 40 years old and they're very competitive in their workplace. This is from years of coaching CrossFit as well. They're competitive in their workplace and they come to the gym with that same kind of intensity, that same kind of competitive drive, and their ego absolutely takes over.
Yeah.
And there's nothing that can punish you when your ego is in like a workout class. So you've done jiu-jitsu, I've done jiu-jitsu. It's not if you have a big ego, like doesn't really matter. Some guy's just going to smash you. Like it's just how it works. Like there is someone directly across from you that's going to be like, hey, just so you know, like I'm going to kick your ass now. Like it doesn't matter how much effort you put in and how good you think you are. I know I'm better than you. I'm going to beat you until you realize like, hey, let's take a step back, learn some processes that will help you be better at jiu-jitsu and move forward. It's like the breaking of the ego. That happens in a lot of jiu-jitsu gyms, a lot of martial arts gyms. There's something across from you. There is nothing across from you in CrossFit. And I think, honest to God, that's why there are so many injuries amongst that particular population. Now, there's a distinct amount of CrossFitters that aren't like that. They're regular people who they don't have ego. They want to learn the things the right way. They want to lift the right way. They want to move and be healthy and be better. And that's, honest to God, I think CrossFit is a great place for that.
Yeah.
Personally, I have a bias because that's where I started. But the orthorexia part is, right? Orthorexia, you would call it. Orthorexia. Yeah. That it does tie into a lot of, I would say it's much less comparison based and much more like this one woman absolutely had orthorexia. And, she was like, I cannot imagine doing that little volume in a day. She said that to me.
Yeah.
I was like, oh yeah, I'm done doing a workout. Like I did a pretty hard CrossFit workout for the first time in forever. Cause I was just like, I'll just do a CrossFit workout for fun. I was like, man, that's a lot of volume. She's like, if I did that little volume, I would go fucking insane. And I'm like, really? She wasn't flexing that she does so much. She was flexing that she has mental issues.
Yeah.
Right?
Maybe. Yeah. Or maybe she just feel like exercise is a very supportive therapy.
True.
In a sense. And your
but,
muscles.
But going too far is where I'm getting at, I guess.
But everybody has a different too far.
Yeah.
So it's like, who are you to suggest, not that I'm like calling you out, but who are you to suggest that your too far has anything to do with her too far? And maybe her too far is like exactly perfect for where she's at.
True. And it also could help her be better mother, sister.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah, she's got
daughter.
stress. She's stressed out.
Yeah.
Some people have different amounts of stress on their plate, and different people have different ways of offsetting that. And you're
At what point do you think it's damaging then? Orthorexia.
Once it becomes damaging, you know?
Yeah.
Once there's I think that something's damaging as soon as, so like something that I've been going through exploration of like addiction and like being honest with where I'm, you know, quote unquote addicted. And whereas it's just like, no, this is actually very normal. And I think addiction, likely a decent flag for where you'd be like, no, this is actually a compulsive addiction. It would be coming into a place where it's like, well, does it deteriorate your relationships? Does it deteriorate your work? Does it deteriorate your sense of self-worth? You know, your sense of like,
does the absence of it deteriorate these things?
Yeah, that would be the same thing.
That would be the same thing?
Yeah, whether it's too much or too little, you know, it's like, does your relationship to this thing actually spill into your life that it makes your life, you know, subjectively worse?
Okay, so then,
but you keep doing it.
Okay, so then again,
and you can't stop.
That would be this woman in that case.
Does she agree that it makes her life worse?
She would say that if I didn't do this level of volume, I would be, I don't know what would happen. Like basically assuming that the worst, right? Like she would be meant.
Well, for a person like that, the greatest thing that they could probably do for themselves, because ultimately, I think in an ideal world, we're not dependent on stuff that we don't need to be dependent on. Like we're fairly dependent on sunlight. We're dependent on meaningful relationships. We're dependent on, you know, some level of nutrition and water and stuff. You know, so within that, it's like, okay, dependent, you know, it's like, it's helpful. It's generally objectively helpful. But with something like that, where it's like, oh, I need to do this CrossFit workout or I'm going to fall apart. Likely the invitation for that person would be, okay, what if you do the opposite? If you do the opposite, probably there's going to be a lot of growth. If what you're actually seeking is growth, probably leaning into the thing that's not just your repetitive,
that's the
habitual habit over and over again will be the direction of that. So for some people, doing, you know, the hard thing isn't necessarily doing the hard thing. For some people, doing the hard thing is the easy thing. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. You know, so for some person, it's like, cool, like the way that I don't have a nervous breakdown is I cold plunge twice a day. I, you know, run a half marathon. I do a CrossFit workout. I do, you know, all the different things. And like, that's how I don't implode and break down. So that's not hard. That's you actually habituating yourself to this pattern that you're dependent on. The hard thing for you would to be just to sit with yourself. So if you really identify as a person, like I'm like a hard thing doer kind of guy or girl, and it's like, okay, cool. Like, let's actually do the hard thing. Let's do the thing that's really actually the hardest for you. Not just the thing that's the most gratifying.
Sit and reflect.
Just sit and be with yourself. Yeah. When that shit comes up, you say, okay, cool. Like I need to like run. And you're like, cool. Like what that is this deep, probably very old, nervous energy coming up to the surface, and you have one avenue to express that out, and then you feel temporarily more euphoric because you release the iricins and the BDNFs and, you know, all the different things that come packaged with exercise, which is great, so good. And if really you're really honestly wanting to do the hard thing and wanting to grow and evolve as a person, oftentimes doing the thing that's not overtly hard is in fact the hardest thing.
So this is, you know, interesting. You have the obesity.
I love that we're wearing the same pants right now. That's the cutest thing in the world. Are you fucking kidding me, bro? Are you fucking kidding me? Dude. Fucking.
Let's go.
Let's go, dude.
So you have the you have the obesity on one side, and then you have the orthorexia. Yeah, orthorexia on the other side. And what I've actually was just kind of thinking is like the people who are that kind of jump back and forth, right? They'll go all in on a diet and training, and they'll gain these practices of like orthorexia, not necessarily anorexia, but really intense training, and then flip right back, and they'll flip right, maybe the answer to trying to find the middle of the two is working on mindfulness as well.
Yeah.
Right. Because that would help balance you. Like if you're
be in the observation of why you do what you do, so, as opposed to being a slave to needing to do the things.
So the orthorexic person, the hard thing for that person is to stop and be with themselves.
Yeah.
The obese person, it might be like that they're not moving, but they're also not being with themselves. The answer would be to maybe go and start working out, but also trying to be mindful of why they're working out or things like that. You have to take those rest pauses. You have to work out and rest and pause and reflect. You can't just dive into something and not have a deeper intrinsic reason, or else you're just going to fall back and hit the pendulum as it swings.
Yeah. Yeah. It's like in like Ayurvedic medicine. There's different, a person might be, just different language for saying the same things, but a person might run like more hot, a person might run more cold. A person might run, this is just a different kind of like metaphor for internal state. A person might be more yang, which is like active go. A person might be more yin, which is like introspective still, it's not that going hard or introspecting and stillness is better or worse. It's just, can you maintain a healthy balance in between? And are you able to actually allow that internal pendulum to swing left, swing right, and have that full access to your full range of the human experience? If you are stuck in one realm where it's just like, I just go hard, bro, just fucking go hard. Like that's all you got. I think there's a certain level of like incompletion there as a person.
I think there's like, this is a nice little theoretical experiment.
At some point you got to be a father, at some point you have to be like a listener. At some point you might have to not, like, the thing for you to do isn't do a 500-pound deadlift. Like, that's not the solution in this situation, bro. The solution in this situation is to like embody some feminine characteristics and I'm just gonna be with this right now.
Yeah.
And that for that person, they might be underdeveloped in that aspect of themselves because they're so fucking go.
Yeah.
And so within, it's like, cool, like, great. But if you want to do the hard thing, probably you're going to need to lead into that other end. But if you're kind of, all meditation and crystals and, your joints are all just hypermobile and flaccid and your connective tissue is just kind of like hanging from your body and you just don't have any go, for that person, you should probably hang out with somebody that's more of like a David Goggins type guy.
Yeah. Yeah.
But that's why relationships are so meaningful and powerful, because we're influencing each other.
Right. You're very good at playing devil's advocate against Chris. I watch you go do that quite a bit.
Yeah.
Not so much with me. Well, I think that's just because I will do it to myself in the first place. I think he's much more direct.
I think I've been contrarian to you throughout this.
Yeah, probably.
Yeah.
This is a nice little thought experiment, is the maintaining between, like, say someone is obese. What I've seen a lot in the fitness industry is develop small habitual things that will get you to the place you want to be, which is the middle, right? You don't want to go extreme and get into extreme practices.
Or be able to also navigate extremeness, though. So you don't want to not be able to go extreme.
So
either.
The other option is intervention, where you go, hey, we need to change everything now, like your life is fucking dependent on it. This is your medicine. You need to take your medicine. So you need to eat this way. You need to train this way. And if you don't, you should feel bad because it's going to kill you. right? Now, obviously, I think most people are going to lean towards that first option, but there has to be some level of argument towards intervention and going to the route of, hey, let's cut a lot of shit out and then bring it back into the fray once we've developed some level of discipline. Is there any legitimacy behind that? Or is this just because...
Yeah, like an exclusion diet.
Yes.
You don't know what you're allergic to. So,
yes.
Well, we're not sure. So let's
intervene hard.
Have you clearly have an autoimmune condition. Probably have some kind of like leaky gut thing happening. Like you're not digesting right. We don't know what it is. Let's have you go, Michaela Peterson, and we're just going to go full on, carnivore. Just all we're going to do is eat meat. Mm-hmm. And organs and nose to tail and all the things. And then it's like, wow, my skin condition is clearing up. My, these things. It's like, I feel better. And I'm allowing the spaciousness because I've removed the irritant I can start the process of healing. But that doesn't necessarily mean this kind of like extreme exclusionary diet. For you, maybe it is the best thing, but generally is an overarching statement,
right.
Like an umbrella concept for all people. It's typically like, cool, let's exclude first so we can clear the board and be able to observe. And then from there, let's start to like a scientific research study. We're going to start to add in some new variables and see how it affects you.
I've seen a lot of success in exercise though, like that, intervening with hard exercise, and then people being like, you know what, my lifestyle's changed a little bit. I can eat more. I can, relax. I'm probably one of those people. Mm-hmm. Like most people in the fitness industry end up being that person. We end up getting super dialed in on what we're good at, which is, for me, was weightlifting and lifting heavy weights and doing it a lot and showing people how I was improving. And now I'm kind of easing up and trying to live a better life, be healthy and set a better example, be cognitively better. I mean, I can always work on my brain and my abilities there and my learning abilities and my speaking abilities. Those are things that I'm developing now. But it started with, boom, way on the other side.
Yeah, that's fine.
Derek, More Plates, More Dates. I talked about him earlier. He was a hardcore bodybuilder, and now he just greases the groove when he can to feel better so he can work harder on these other projects. There has to be we can't, I guess what I'm getting at here is like, there has to be something other than, hey, let's develop these little atomic habits, these things, and it's all about a better lifestyle. Like, what if we did intervene in an extreme way with people, and then they learned something about themselves where they then could go and bring everything back down to normal?
That's one of the tools.
Yeah,
there's just a lot of different tools.
I know.
That's one of the tools. Let's push you all the way into like the darkest side of your habit.
Yeah.
It's like you catch your kid smoking cigarettes. You're like, cool, I'm going to get your a carton. Cool, you want to smoke cigarettes? All right, let's smoke some cigarettes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Could you imagine doing that to a fucking kid?
It would suck.
Yeah. All right.
Oh, baby. We're pulling out the old Libro.
Aaron Alexander, the Align method.
Yeah. Read the blurb from Laird.
Where is it? Is it back here? Right here?
Yeah.
The foundational principles for unlocking peak human potential. Laird Hamilton, pioneering waterman and co-founder of XPT. You worked with him, right?
No, we haven't. I haven't done like body work with him or anything.
Who did you do? You did body work with Usher.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's crazy. My man has had his hands on Usher. Did he write a song about you? Your hands?
Yeah, I don't know. I don't think so. It was cool. We one time doing the Usher. So I worked with Usher for maybe span like a year, and in that time frame, one of the situations that was pretty cool was he would like call me out to his studio, and I'd come and like work with like him and his crew or whatever, and there was a cool thing where he won the same studio that Michael Jackson created, like Thriller and all sorts of stuff. That was cool. But it was interesting getting to have the experience of being in the studio, listening to him doing this, beat or whatever. And then like 2 weeks later, walking around the mall in LA and like this new Usher song comes out and it's like all the rage. I don't know what the song was, but that was a kind of a cool, interesting like moment where I felt pretty grateful. I was
It's
like,
such a dude thing of you to not know what the song was too.
Yeah, I don't know. Yeah.
You obviously like don't listen to Usher on your free time.
I like Usher.
Yeah, how could you not? Though? How could you not like?
I liked him a lot as a kid. That was really my Usher hero.
Yeah.
So good. Music's so important.
Yeah.
You know there was a study from Albert Einstein College or School of Medicine, and they found that they were measuring the effects of different strategies to prevent cognitive decline, and they found that dance specifically was the longest lever to prevent cognitive decline. Dance like to music, particularly I think partner dance. And the reason was because it's like emotive. It's a lot, hand-eye coordination, but it's the coordination part compared to I'm going to just sit hunched over in a, artificially blue lit room staring into a crossword puzzle compared to I'm going to just do like bicep curls. It's the coordination part that really like lights the brain up.
Wow. All right. The align method, not the alignment method. The align method.
Bro, you sound so stoked right now.
I hate plugging shit. I hate plugging shit. I would, it's like, I know you don't like plugging shit either, right?
No, you don't need to plug it. You need to talk about the
fucking
book.
Buy it, bro.
Don't talk about the book. I don't need, whatever. Buy it if you want to buy it. Like, I get like $2 if you buy a book. It doesn't make a difference.
Yeah. Okay. Well, then just support my friend Aaron because he's a good guy. Go to, what's your Instagram?
Align Podcast.
Align Podcast, and listen to the Align Podcast as well. I need to listen to your conversations with Gabor because I find him fascinating after the Rogan stuff. So
he's great.
Yeah.
A
lot of his stuff about childhood and like he's really against the grain, like of psychoanalytic stuff. So
a lot of traditional definitions around therapy and stuff. He's kind of created some pretty revolutionary perspectives. One thing that's interesting with Gabor is he, I don't know if he was the first to introduce this perspective on ADHD, but he probably was. But the suggestion is that ADHD is a early onset childhood like defense mechanism to avoid the present moment because it's too much to handle. And so if you're a kid, he grew up in Budapest during the times of like Nazi invasions and such. I believe that's right. And he has like a crazy, crazy story. He's old. He's like late 70s or something. He's like an actual elder, which is cool to be around. And so if you're in that situation where your parents are fighting, there's abuse, there's something that you're just like, I'm this sensitive little sponge of a human organism, and I just can't handle this situation, you'll learn to be like, cool, like flip the channel. And so now you start to program that into yourself of like, whatever's happening now, I just need to be somewhere else. Yeah. And now I get to somewhere else and I'm like, okay, I need to be somewhere else. And you program that from a young age. So that's kind of an interesting reframe that he's had on a lot of things, but ADHD is one of them.
I definitely need to check that out. All right, man. Thank you so much for coming on.
Can I plug my program?
Your program?
You don't want me to.
Oh, okay.
No,
what's your program? What's the deal with the program?
The book?
Is this a new thing?
Yeah, we launched it the early January. It's probably like January 15th or so.
Oh, so it hasn't launched yet?
No.
Oh, okay, but it's gonna launch.
It's launching, baby.
Okay, what is the program? Tell me all about it. I'm sorry, I didn't know what you meant, bro.
No, it's okay. So first of all, the first week is free. So if people want to actually get a baseline assessment of their range of motion of all the major joints in their body, that would be a great place to start. So just going through and get a baseline assessment. And then in the first week, we break down what I would refer to as mobility foundations. So it's specific practice you'd learn from any PT or manual therapist or whatever. Everybody just needs to know these things. Mm-hmm. It's like PNF and pin and stretch and stuff like that. And just show you how to do that with yourself. And then the second week goes through recovering full functional range of motion of lower body. The third week is upper body. Fourth week is connecting left to right, up to down. So kind of like throwing, running, punching, all that stuff. 5th week, nervous system regulation, 6th week, environment. And yeah, I'm super stoked about it. I've been like, it's like the digital version of the book. It's everything that I would want to offer a client. You know, stuff that like work with, you know, Usher or whatever. These are like all the things that I'd be like, cool, like this is what we're doing. I need you to know this.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that comes out early January. There's a waiting list now. We'll be able to accept 500 people into the program. I'm like very confident it'll fill up. And the reason there's like 500 people is because there's going to be a live call at the end of each week where we talk and we can like, people can ask questions and we like break down like, cool, like what are your trouble spots here? How do we fix it?
Cool.
And that's all at alignpodcast.com/AMP, Align Method Program, AMP.
Sweet, dude. I had no idea about this.
Oh,
that's super cool.
It's been like the main thing I've been focused on for the last 6 months.
Oh, okay.
So we're like, we're going, man.
Yeah.
It's very exciting.
Very cool. All right. Yeah. Check it out. alignpodcast.com/AMP.
AMP, baby.
All right. That's it. Thank you guys so much for watching.
Thank you, Doug.